Good morning. Hello, everybody, or good afternoon, depending where you are in the country or in the world. And thank you for joining me, Ben Ochart, for today's Cichlids and Coffee live stream. And I saw there were some early arrivals, and as is the tradition, if you were the first one on the live stream, be sure to send me an email. And first one that appeared on the chat, it looks like, according to what I can see here, is it Richard Maloney? Richard Maloney, were you the first one today? If so, send me your mailing address to ben.o.cichlid, and I will get you some stickers as soon as I find them in one of the boxes here in the garage. So, somebody said warm and sunny California. You're actually picking on me. We had snow this morning, snow here in Nashville, and very pretty, very, very pretty. I'm not going to be going out and driving in it, but very, very nice. So we have, it looks like, about 55 people on. Let's see if we can get some more on. Be sure to share the link with all your friends. And let's go ahead and officially get this thing underway. If you're new, be sure to hit that bell. The bell seems to be the real significant thing these days with YouTube, and that would be really appreciated. Hit that sub button, hit that bell, and let's see if we can get that 25% subscribe viewership up. Let's get more subs watching, and that would be greatly appreciated. Great way to support the channel. Hit that bell, hit that sub button, and don't forget to hit that thumb up or down, depending what you think. And for those of you who've asked about how to support the channel, you can do so. You can grab sweatshirts and coffee mugs and things like this to help support the channel at the Teespring. Teespring, it's under all of my videos. Use Livestream for a 10% discount. I keep forgetting to mention that. Livestream will give you 10% discount at checkout at Teespring. And also, if you use my Amazon link to get to Amazon, you will be able to also help the channel that way. I list a lot of products there at my store, but if you use the link, no matter where you go on Amazon and buy something, it'll give the channel a little bit of credit with qualified products. So let's go ahead and get into today's topic, and then after we've done that for a little bit, we'll go ahead and pick up the chat and your questions. A big shout out to, boy, I love a hot cup of coffee. Do you? A big shout out to my moderators. I think I saw GP on there, and of course Kevin Green, Denny, and the amazing Candy. And big shout out to them, volunteers. They do this because of the love of the hobby. So a big shout out to them. And let's get into why I'm actually starting to love having a fish room. And the first reason is that I can have special projects. I can have special projects going, and they're not around the house. They're not spread around. They're concentrated in one area. Like right now, I have up here on top. You see these. Those are 3 29-gallon tanks. One of them is going to be a hospital or quarantine tank, and not sure what I'm going to do with the other 2. One of them will probably be a planted tank. Somebody locally is talking to me about some rainbows, and so I might do a little, just a planted rainbow tank. And so that's one project. Then I have the other project here on the bottom, that's the stand that I'm checking the strength of and making sure it's all stained up correctly for the aquarium that's coming from glass cages here in Nashville. So projects are not in the way of what's going on in the house, and that's a big deal. You've heard me before say happy wife, happy life. So That's important. The other thing that is really has really been a big plus for having a dedicated area is that I can leave my setup. Some of you know that my live streams before were being delivered from the bedroom. That's where I had that 150-gallon aquarium. And so before I would do a live stream, I'd have to spend about an hour doing, setup, putting up lights and checking the lights, checking, the exposure and setting up the camera, getting the right angles. And that's not the case anymore. I can just leave this equipment set up and not have to mess with it. And that gives me like an extra hour of time, because I have this dedicated space that is only for fish, only for filming. It also has some storage in here as well. Full disclosure, there's still some garage type stuff in here, but for the most part, it's my fish room. The other reason I'm really loving the being here in a dedicated area is a bulk of the storage, the shelving, is all fish stuff. So I have a very easy access place where I can put, this is just 2 of the 5 different sections that I have where I'm keeping fish stuff. And so that's actually a big plus too, because I don't have stuff in closets, in the cabinets, in the stands, in places where my wife goes into and goes, hey, what's all this stuff? Where'd this come from? And that's no longer an issue. Just like with the filming setup, I don't have I don't have my wife walking into the bedroom and saying, hey, when are you going to clean up all this stuff? When is all this stuff going to get out of here? And so I think that's a big plus of having a dedicated area, especially like for someone like myself who's a YouTuber. Another big plus point for me of having a fish room is being able to have an area where I'm not worried about the floors. For those of you who saw the videos that completed the departure from Los Angeles, you'll remember a video, I think the title of it was, It's Gone, and it was just the space where the 150 was. If you look carefully at the floor, that wood floor was damaged, and I had to pay almost $1,000 to the person who was leasing me the house to fix that floor. And no one's fault except my own. I had a stand that went all the way to the floor, so it was very hard to dry underneath it. It was almost impossible to dry underneath it without moving the entire thing away from the wall. And so there was some water damage that I had to pay for. Well, here in the garage, that's not an issue anymore. I have a concrete floor that's been coated with a high quality epoxy, and you can see the shims I'm using to level the tanks. Those shims, by the way, can be broken off so that they don't show. You can break off the shim so that it's just underneath the tank. And I'm probably going to do that. But anyway, I love not having to have the anxiety about damaging a floor. I love having a tank in the house, and I probably will have a tank in the house at some point, and maybe a discus tank. But it really is nice not have to worry about damaging the floor. Another plus point, another thing that I really like is the having a sink that is entirely dedicated to just fish. So you can see I leave my Python is a Python hose system, just stays connected, and I have hanging nets, and I have scrubbers, and I have digital thermometers, and it's all laying out there. There's nobody coming around and saying, when are you going to clean up the sink? And none of that's going on. And I don't have to go outside. I had a sink outside at the other house that was kind of nice to work at. But when I was done, it had to be all cleaned up because it was the outside, it was a common area. So now I have this area that is exclusively for the aquarium maintenance, and that really, I think that's great. So that's a big plus point, I think, of having a fish room. So do you folks have a fish room? And if you do, if you have a room that's totally dedicated to fish, I'd like to get your take on it. I mean, one disadvantage, if you want to hear disadvantages, is that I am in a separate area away from the family. It is real nice to be able to like lay in bed or sit, watch TV and have a nice aquarium going next to you. There are some big plus points to that. Very enjoyable, very relaxing. But if you have a room that's dedicated only to fish, let me know what you think. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments. What you think are the plus points? What do you think are the negatives? I'd like to hear. I'd like to hear from you, and always be learning, right? That's the motto, and we all learn from each other. So I'm learning as I go along in the developing of this fish room. I'm taking ideas that I've stolen from you and incorporating them into the fish room. So some exciting news. I ordered some fish. I'm going to give you a little preview of some fish that I have coming in, and I'm going to be releasing a video called Ordered Fish, Future Fish, or Dream Fish. I'm not sure of the title yet, but I have certain fish that are on my wish list. And as I mentioned before, I got a gift certificate at Christmas. My son-in-law gave me a nice gift certificate for the Cichlids Shack. And for those of you that don't know James Largo or the Cichlids Shack, one of my favorite fish providers, I actually did a video driving from Los Angeles to Nashville where I stopped at the Cichlids Shack. And if one of the moderators can share that link, that would be great. And I'll include it when this posts to YouTube as a posted video. I'll include the link up here somewhere. But I ordered some fish, and I'm getting what James calls a skittle, or skittles. And this picture doesn't do it justice. It's actually a very pretty OB. I'm also getting a red-shouldered severum. I believe they're beautiful fish. I'm also getting a couple of viejas, small ones. And these fish are all going to go in except for the OB. The OB is going to go in here to keep the Borlei and the Strawberry Company. And the viejas, the red shoulder severum, they're going to go in the Central American tank. So as you can imagine, these fish are going to be outgrowing the 55. So those might be the fish, the South American tank might be the fish that ends up graduating up to the 90-gallon that's coming in. I also have my eye on a couple other larger tanks, some 180s, some 220s, tanks like that I'll be setting up on this side of me. So I'll be flanked by the 90 on this side and perhaps a 200, 220 on this side. And we'll see what those end up being. One of them will probably be discus, and the other one will be the larger South Americans. I'm probably going to keep the African cichlid tank, smaller varieties, peacocks, things of that nature. I would like to add a Z-Rock. I would like to add a Autopharynx tetrastigma, maybe a bicolor 500, a flavescent, a Benga sunshine, fish like that are not going to get enormous and might be able to live a lot of their life in the 55, and maybe at some point pick up a 125 where I can move some of those cichlids over to them. So look for the video, ordered fish or new fish, dream fish, because I have some other fish on that dream fish list. I'll talk about them in the video. I'm hoping I'll get it done tomorrow, I'm also going to be taking a trip after today's live stream over to Critters, Aquatic Critters here in Nashville. Hopefully the sun will come out and the roads will be safe. And I'll go over to Aquatic Critters. I'm going to pick up some additional fish. I'm not going to tell you what they are. You're going to have to tune in. All right. So let's take a look at what's on your mind. And let's take a look here at the chat. Now, I'm going to scroll back in the chat, and it looks like we have about 143 people on, according to my analytics here. If I've missed a super chat, I'm sorry. I wasn't looking at the chat. Super chats are ways that people can support the channel by giving a little bit of money to the channel. And I thank those of you who have super chatted in the past. And I'll go ahead and scroll through the chat and see if I missed anything. Jerry Martin. Hey, Jerry. Thank you so much for that super chat. With a separate fish room, how much time do you spend in it? I find myself in it only when I have to do something. I do come down, Jerry. I do come down and I sit in front of the tank and just watch the fish. I think that's an important thing to do. I had a kind of a funny video a few years ago called "Our Fish Are Talking to Us, but Are We Listening?" I think that was the name of it. The fish are talking to us, but are we listening? And I think observing them, especially when you have fish that are aggressive, that can be aggressive, it's important to observe them, watch the hierarchy, watch the pecking order, who's in charge, see if there's any violence, any aggression. One of the reasons I'm going to go out and buy some fish today, weather permitting, is I want to spread some stuff out in the South American tank that's going on between a few of the fish. And but I find that I am spending time looking at them. Am I looking? If I was to add up the total time when you have them in the house and you're walking by the tank, 50 times a day, probably I was watching it more then than I am now. But I am coming down and sitting in this chair that I'm in right now and turned around and get my fish therapy, where I just sit and watch them. I really enjoy watching them a lot. I love watching how they interact. I'm really enjoying watching the geophagus, the way they're constantly sifting the sand and it comes out through their gills. They're like a machine. They're like a machine processing the sand, and it's like nonstop. And there's a certain time of the day where the light is coming through one of the windows. It hits the tank at a certain angle, and if you look at this tank, you'll see like 100 pits, 100 small pits where the geophagus have dug and spit, dug and spit, dug and spit. So I'm really enjoying watching them. I'm watching the color show up on their bodies. The red spotted severum is pretty much colored up already. And so, but the geos are starting to get more brilliance. Those spots of light that they get on their body, very, very pretty. So I'm really anxious to see how that comes along. So I hope that answered your question, Jerry, and thank you for that $5 super chat. Very appreciated. I will use it for gas money on the way to the fish store. And let's see. I'm going to go back to the back of the chat, to the beginning of the chat, and see if anything jumps out at me. I know that you folks were having a conversation. Let's see here. Some of you were talking about sumps versus canisters. I think anything over 150, you should really seriously consider a sump. However, a couple powerful canisters like the ones recommended by GP, I think those were like Sun 3000s or Sun 5000s. A couple canisters can do a great job. I like to combine canisters and hang on back filters. The advantages of the sump, of course, is you do get that enormous amount of added water volume, and that's going to dilute pollutants, right? Dilution pollution. So you're going to get that diluted pollutants, and that helps a lot. So you turn a 150 into a 180. You turn a 220 into a 150, or I'm sorry, a 220 into a 250 by adding a Sump. It gives you a little extra dilution, and it's very easy to work on. Sumps, once they're dialed in, are the easiest kind of filter to work on. Reach in, change a sock, rinse a sponge, put it back in. I'm probably going to use one of the 29-gallon tanks. I'm probably going to turn it into a Sump. I'm going to use some of the silicone, create some baffles, create some areas where I can stack some sponges, and then an area for a return pump, and try using that with an overflow box on the 90-gallon that I have coming in. It's going to be an experiment. I don't know about these overflow boxes. We'll see how it works. And so that's something that's coming up. But I love sumps. But if you have a very large tank and you put sumps on it, I think, if I remember correctly, Adam C., one of my favorite YouTubers, does a lot of great stuff with African cichlids. Adam C., look him up on YouTube. He has, a whole bunch of canisters on his large, like a 300-gallon tank. It's all canisters, like 5 or 6 of them. Stephen LeBlanc, thank you for that super chat. I ran into the same thing. I want to pick up a Phoenix from the Cichlid Shack. Phoenix is a fish that was bred by a friend of, see if I can find it here. This is a Phoenix. This is a Phoenix fish, and it was bred by a friend of James Largo, and James Largo has turned that fish over, the breeding and distribution of that fish has been turned over to James Largo. I went on the website. That was one of the fish that I wanted to get, and it was out of stock. So, James, if you're listening, you need to get some of those Phoenix on the market, my friend. Beautiful fish. I wanted one of those. I wanted one of those Skittle OBs. James also says he has a line of yellow and blue OBs. Those could be very pretty. Of course, the risk you take with OBs, as you do with any hybrid, is a little bit of extra aggression. I've had some OBs that have gone through periods of aggression, but ultimately ended up being pretty mellow. So I consider myself having been lucky with the OBs that I've owned in the past. There are OBs out there that are eye biter OBs, fish like that they're very, very aggressive normally. And then they turn them into OBs. I mean, I don't know if I would risk, personally, I don't know if I'd risk that. What I'm looking for with this tank here is a calmer African cichlid tank. And recently in some of the comments, I've heard from people that have left African cichlids because they didn't find that looking at their tank was relaxing because there was so much aggression. So I definitely have had my moments. They're all chronicled in my videos where I've had battles and fights in the last 150-gallon tank. That Venusis, that big Venusis I had, he sort of took over. Maybe you'll see him here. These are some videos of the tanks I had before, and it's just a video that I created as a backdrop. And the 100-gallon was very, very peaceful, and I didn't really have any issues in that tank. And in the 100-gallon tank, what I ended up with was a tank boss, the Venusis, who, despite threats from a very large Malawi trout and the eyebiter, was able to hold on to the top spot and was very benevolent in controlling that tank. And so, let me see here. This is supposed to be switching to the 150, but it's not coming up, or it's taking too long. I do want to get one of these beautiful fish here. You can see the OB there at the bottom of the screen. Ended up being very, very peaceful. So at any rate, if you end up with a tank boss that can keep everybody in line and isn't trying to kill all the other fish, you'll be in great shape. But if you have a tank boss that's very aggressive, you'll probably have to rehome, and by that I mean get rid of them. You'll have to put them somewhere else. So at any rate, let's take a look back at the chat. Let me pick up your questions. And also I want to welcome those of you who came on a little bit late. I went into the main subject right away, so you'll have to catch the replay if you're just joining us on when I talk, on the subject of what I love about having a dedicated fish room. I decided to go ahead and go after the main subject first and foremost. But let's take a look at what your questions are. Richard Maloney, did I mention that one already? Let me see. No, I didn't. Let me see. Richard Maloney, thank you so much for that super chat. And you're welcome for the entertainment. All right, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in. And hey, GP, hey, Denny, hey, Candy, I'm glad you made it. And thank you for that link to Adam C. He's one of the good guys on YouTube. Really like that guy. And I'm not sure if Kevin Green is here. Sometimes we get Kevin. Kevin has schedule conflicts with work. Stephen LeBlanc, I had an eyebiter as my boss since he went into the hospital tank with cauliflower. The aggression in my main tank has tripled. That happens, and even when you remove a tank boss, when you remove the tank boss, or you remove a fish that's being very aggressive, very often what happens is another fish will move into the role of being the aggressive fish. So you think you're solving the problem, and sometimes you can feel like you're playing that game whack-a-mole, where you're pounding on one and then another one pops up. You pound another one pops up. It can get very frustrated for African cichlid keepers, and so some of them, they go off and make a community tank. They say, that's it, I'm done. And they go out and they get a bunch of neon tetras and set up a planted tank and end of story. So Candy says, no Kevin Green. Okay. All right. Yeah, he told me he might be busy. Thank you for that, Candy. Gus HKY14, imagine you could buy a tank boss that is guaranteed to be tame and will be keeping everyone. It's really hard to predict, really hard to say, because you put a fish in and you have the dynamic, you have those different interactions between the fish. So you don't know what you're going to end up with. Another fish can trigger that fish. So that fish might have been tame in another tank, but the shape and color of one of the fish in your tank is triggering something. And if that fish gets triggered, then you're off to the races. Laura Sutton, a coffee cup emoji there, a coffee cup little meme, and $3.99. Thank you, Laura. Much appreciated. And Jeff Rotz Fish Keeping. Thank you, Jeff, for that super chat. Good morning, Ben. Good morning, everyone. Sump newbie here. On a sump with 2 returns, a 300-gallon, actually 2 returns, should you have 2 return pumps or is one with some kind of Y or T junction. Two returns. You could either plug one of those. You can put a bulkhead in that plugs one of the returns, or you can split. You can split it. In other words, you can have the plumbing go from one into two, or you could have two pumps and have one pump as a backup and have the returns coming into the tank in different areas of the tank. I guess that would create more water movement, which is always a good thing, right? Spreads out the oxygen, gets the detritus to float and get sucked into the intakes. So, but you have a couple options there. You can use, if you're going to go with a split, you're probably going to have to go with a pretty powerful pump. I have a Cichlids, am I pronouncing it right? Cichlids? A Cichlids 900-gallon pump from, that was courtesy of Jay Wilson over at Cichlids, and I thank him for that. I'll probably be using that in the setup. It might be too much. It might be too much for the size of the Sump, the 29-gallon. We'll see. I mean, you do have to dial these things in, but you can bulkhead off one of the returns and not use it. You can do a split plumbing. Probably the purists out there, the Sump purists, are going to say have your own separate plumbing, two separate returns, two separate return pumps with their own hard plumbing that goes to each return to the tank. And that gives you the backup that if one fails, you still have some circulation occurring. Now remember, to run a test, and I say this, I have a Sump playlist. And in the Sump playlist, I talk about flooding. People are afraid of sumps because they think they're going to flood. And be sure to run a test. Turn your pumps off and see how high your sump fills up. And it shouldn't overflow if it's dialed in correctly and you have the right safeguards in place. In other words, you don't have a back siphon coming back through the pumps because you have one-way valves in place. So the water can only flow from your pump up. It can't flow back because you have a valve that only opens up to the tank. And it shuts when water tries to back siphon. Back siphoning is very fast and will definitely flood your sump. So definitely splice in back siphon valves so that you can't back siphon into your pumps, and also drill your returns with a hole just below the. If you have hooked returns, right? You can't do this, of course, if you have a bulkhead returns. But if you have a hooked return like a fluval, you can put a hole right below the water line, and that will not back siphon either because the air will break the siphon. So I have a whole playlist, Jeff Ross Fish Keeping. I have a whole playlist on setting up sumps, how to avoid flooding, things of that nature. Candy can share a link to that playlist if she can. That would be great. All right, let's see here. Seth Snyder, it looks like it says Soup Bone. Seth, Soup Bone? Soup Bone, Imperial Tropical, and Beantown. Beantown and Imperial, they both seem like very legit outfits. I've had some conversations with, is it Fritz? I forget his last name. He was the owner of Beantown. I've also had interactions with Imperial, and they both seem legit. They both seem very committed to customer satisfaction, and that's what I look for. I look for, when I buy fish online, I look for the guarantee. What's the dead on arrival guarantee? And what's their level of communication? Do they get back to you right away? Do they respond? Do they answer your questions? And if there is a problem, how quickly do they work with you to resolve it? You know, Terry, Terry Spelling, I've actually picked up some nice fish from Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, they do have great prices. And my Autopharynx tetrastigma and one of those Taiwan reefs I used to have, they were just stunning fish. And the Fusco, a beautiful Fusco. All of those were picked up as juveniles from Tampa Bay. So I know some people like to rag on Tampa Bay, but I actually had good luck with them. I actually had good luck with Tampa Bay. And they're not, and maybe this has changed. Maybe the owner was a little overwhelmed before, but they were not the quickest to return my communication, but they did eventually. And I ended up getting some good fish. Tampa Bay, Dave's Rare is a good source. Cunningham Cichlids, and of course the Cichlid Shack, the Wonder of Cichlids. These are all very legit, and I'm starting to discover now certain South American providers and Central American providers that are out there. If you know Central and South American fish providers that you recommend, list them in the chat or note them below the video. I want to know about them. I'm going to start acquiring fish that are of that variety. So let's see what else is on your mind here in the chat. GP Taiwan reefs are stunningly beautiful fish. If you notice the logo of my channel, that's a Taiwan reef, and I believe I picked that one up from Tampa Bay, and it came out of the bag as a 2.5 inch Taiwan reef with beautiful colors. And people were saying, oh, that fish is juiced, that fish can't be real, blah, 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 blah. I kept waiting for the juice to wear off. It never did. He just got prettier and prettier and prettier. And he, to this day, he's gone now, but that fish is the logo of the channel. A logo that was done by a friend of mine over in Great Britain. Candy, thank you for the likes, 100 likes. Oh, great. Thank you, everybody, for the thumbs up. Very, very cool of you. I really appreciate it. What your likes and your shares and your hitting the bell and your subscribing, what that does is it tells YouTube this channel is offering some content that people are finding valuable. So what they do is they then will put the channel in front of other people on the sidebar. They will recommend the channel to other fish keepers, and that's how channels grow. It's called the algorithm, and your excitement about the channel, demonstrated through subscriptions, through hitting the bell, through liking, your excitement is what actually triggers the algorithm and tells YouTube, oh, here's something going on, let's get it in front of other fish keepers. That's why I tend to bang that drum a little bit, maybe too much, but it's really appreciated when you do that. And thank you for those likes. Let's see here. Jack Watley. Javier J. I've heard about Jack Watley. I have his name noted, and when I'm ready to do that Cichlids the discus tank, I am definitely going to be contacting Jack. Denny, that is on my wish list. I'm looking for a small green tear. I want him a little bit smaller than the other fish, so that he can kind of get in the pecking order a little bit low and grow up around the other fish, so he doesn't really, because I know they can be a tear, just like a red tear. So I am looking for a green tear, yes. A small, preferably a small one. And let's see here. So Jeff Ross, I hope I answered your question, and thank you to Unconventional for the super chat. Thank you, Unconventional, and the coffee. Thank you, my friend. And Candy, thank you for sharing the link to Instagram. You folks can follow me on Instagram. I post previews and photos that are behind the scenes that you don't see anywhere else on Instagram. And also, thank you for posting that Amazon affiliate link as well. So let's see. Any other questions? Put them in the chat now. M&C Aquatics. My tank boss is a Pundamilla Neri. He's littler than the others, but keeps even my Venusus in line. Yeah, it's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. Some of these small fish can be very aggressive. Like among the two geophagus I have in this tank here, this is the bigger, not even sure if you can see him. This is the bigger geo. The smaller geo pushes him around. And then the Severum comes around and breaks it up. So the Severum's being kind of the tank boss. But the little geo pushes the big geo around. So it's not always size. And Richard Maloney, edutainment, Ben educating. Thank you, Richard. I do try and impart ideas that I hope are valid and workable. Let's see here. Ray Lee, I wouldn't suggest an Oscar to go in with African cichlids, if that's what you're asking, only because I've heard too many horror stories about it. They do require a bit different water parameters. Your Oscar is going to want a lower pH, even though locally bred, tank bred Oscars can probably take just about any pH. But you have different water parameters, and you could end up with a new set of issues. So I don't know. I personally would keep Africans. I mean, I'm a purist in that way. I wasn't originally. I was just throwing everything into a tank. If the name cichlid appeared at the store, I bought it and I threw it in. I go, well, it's a cichlid. It must be okay. But I try to keep only haps and peacocks from Lake Malawi. Now, some people mix Tanganyika. They put Tanganyikans in there. They put Lake Victoria. I don't know. I mean, they say it's successful. Some people put Mabuna with haps. They say it's successful. In my mind, it's going to be successful until it isn't. And then you're going to have some problems. When my Mabuna became big, they started harassing the peacocks and the haps. So I went strictly by lake. And so me personally, I wouldn't put an Oscar with African cichlids. Now, can you put an Oscar with a green tear, with a Severum, with some geos? If you're an expert on South American and Central American, please comment on that. Would you put an Oscar with other South American, Central American cichlids, with New World cichlids? Would you do that? I imagine as long as it doesn't fit in its mouth, because it will eat what fits in its mouth. But comment below. Let's share the wisdom here. Thank you so much for that $9.99 super chat there. Looks like Adam Brown. Adam Brown, thank you so much, my friend. New to the channel, really enjoy the content. Excited about your interest and future videos in SC, South and Central American cichlids. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that. You know, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I'm learning all about them. I'm researching them. I'm trying to get the right tank mates. I'm probably going to make some mistakes that you folks are going to call me out on. And please call me out on them. Always be learning. So I don't mind being criticized. I have a learning curve. I'm trying to do research. And I'm really enjoying putting together a South American tank. And the colors, the shapes, the behavior, the interaction, and I'm really happy about it. You know, I was exclusively an African cichlid guy, And I'm just glad I didn't put African cichlid, in the name of the channel. It's just Ben O Cichlid, so I can keep all of my branding. That can stay the same. But I'm very excited about the whole South American, Central American, New World cichlid situation. Very happy about it. We're flirting with 200. We're at 186, it looks like, on my screen. And doesn't look like we're going to break 200. Maybe we will. I don't know. Last week, I think we got up around 250. It was a very, very nice welcome back that I picked up. A lot of folks are watching the replay, especially back in California. My friends in California, like Kevin Green, were complaining about how early it is. And at any rate, James Green, that would be a good topic. And I certainly have a lot of, I can't believe I did that with African cichlids. And I've done videos on a lot of those things that I did. And some of them were disastrous. But I'm sure I'll have a few stories about the Central and South American as well. Curious guy, is bacteria everything that matters in an aquarium, including the filter, whether a sump or canister? Does ceramic rings of same quantity house more bacteria than same size sponge? I don't know. Those are great questions. I'm not sure if there's some science on it. Bacteria is vital. It's vital, because otherwise you can't help but have an ammonia and a nitrite spike that is very hard on the fish. Some fish are hardy and can withstand it, like your black skirt tetras, goldfish, I imagine, hardier fish can take it. Some fish will die immediately. So the bacteria is very, very important. This is why I have shifted my orientation in my tanks to bacteria being housed primarily in substrate that is not touched. So I'm running with a sand substrate, a deep sand substrate. You see this here? This is 3 inches. 3 inches. About 3 inches of substrate with both of these tanks. And that's going to be the home of bacteria primarily. And the filters are used for water polishing. I'm still going to wash the filters in tank water. It's just what I do, just out of habit. But at the same time, I'm not that concerned about those filters. It's a bit of an old school approach. Some people have suggested under gravel filters to even further, but I want very little movement and very low amounts of oxygen at the bottom of the substrate, because I want to see if I can cultivate some anaerobic bacteria, which will help control some of the nitrates. But bacteria is vital. And then you have a lot of other things to consider, right? I talk about sometimes how it's a fluid situation. A little pun on words, but it's true. It's a fluid situation. What's your stocking level? What size, how frequent, and how large are your water changes? How often are you servicing your filters? So there are lots of moving parts in the equation. Bacteria is a very significant part of the equation. Unfortunately, what kills off a lot of young fish keepers is, in an effort to do the right thing, they clean the heck out of their tank, they kill off their beneficial bacteria, they have an ammonia spike, and then they scratch their head and go, I don't know what I did. I cleaned everything and all my fish died. Now, sometimes you might feel like you need to do a major cleaning. You vacuum, you do a big water change, you clean your filters, you do all this at once. I would suggest spacing it out over a few weeks. If you do it all at once, feel like you have to, which I don't know why you would, but if you feel you have to, add some bacteria. immediately, when you refill the tank, put some Frit Zyme 7 or 700, put some Chem stability in there, give the aquarium a bacterial boost. Take a filter or some decor from an established tank, put it in the tank, give the bacteria a boost. If you find yourself, after doing a big major maintenance, not a bad idea, not a bad precaution. It's a very common thing I hear. I did a water change. I have a video, one of my best performing videos of all time. I think the thumbnail says, "That's not good." It's a top 5 water change disasters. Top 5 water change disasters. The video is very interesting. The comments under it are real interesting, because a large number of the people that commented under it were commenting about a big die-off after a water change. So it's not that uncommon. Now there's other factors. Maybe the city just really poured a lot of chlorine and chloramine and all kinds of junk. Maybe you had some toxic runoff from a local farm into your well or into the water source that you were unaware of, and you ended up making your tanks extra toxic. If you'd known about it, you could have put up to 10 times the amount of safe, Chem safe, or Fritz Complete. You can't overdose those things. I don't think you can. So you could have super dosed it with water conditioner 2 or 3 days in a row. If you know the city is doing something weird to your water, some people that live in urban areas have wells. Sometimes you can get nitrates from local farms because they put nitrate fertilizer right on the crops. You have a big storm that goes into the well, poisons your tank, really gives you takes you up at around 200 nitrates. Are you drinking out of one of these cups? Are you wearing one of these sweatshirts? If you are, send me a picture and I'll show it during a live stream. You can pick these up at the Teespring, and don't forget to use live stream when you check out for 10% off. And hey, Remco. Thank you, Remco, for that super chat. Always appreciated. Your support of the channel is always noted and appreciated, my friend. Now, when I clean my gravel, in this case my sand, because of the approach that I'm taking with beneficial bacteria, I'm not raking things up. I'm simply running the siphon about this far above, and just by going back and forth like this, it loosens up anything that might be on the surface, like detritus, waste, poop, whatever, and it'll get sucked up into the siphon. So that's how I'm siphoning the sand. You don't put a siphon into the sand. You'll just get a plug siphon. So don't do that. Your siphon tube will just get plugged. Don't bother doing that. So I'm leaving that substrate alone. I want bacteria growing and populating that substrate. Some of you are concerned about gas. Then I've heard that that's a wives' tale. You're not going to get poisonous gas coming out of the substrate. That's what I've heard. Andrea's Herbal and Things. I dialed in my tank by adding more substrate, adding plants, and doing a 10% water change. The tank has been running for 4 years, and the die-offs have not happened. What you have there, Andrea, is a very, very stable situation. And the fact that you're not messing with it gives you 2 benefits in my mind. One, you're not disrupting your beneficial bacteria. That's awesome. You've also given more of a home for your bacteria by adding more substrate. Also, you're not creating a big shift in pH, a possible shift in pH, or opening yourself up to the risk of a big temperature change by doing a very large water change. A mistake that people make sometimes. So you have a very stable situation, a self-contained ecosystem that sort of, it's taking care of itself, and that's awesome. That's what I'm going for. I'm going for a system that can be a bit enclosed. I'll always do water changes, just to add fresh water, add minerals, and remove hormones, whatever. I'm always going to do some water changes, but I want a system like yours that has become very rock solid stable. The other point that I'd like to comment on about what you said is that because you're not messing with the tank too much, you're not startling your fish. Because a startled fish is going to be a bit weakened. They can run into things and scratch an eye, which can open them up to infection. Their immune system can be a bit compromised if they get messed with too much or startled too much. And if they have any dormant parasite or disease, it might come to the surface, right? Because you messed with them too much. This is one of the reasons, for example, why you would quarantine after some fish have been shipped to you. It's a good idea to quarantine because they've been through a lot of stress. Their immune systems are compromised. If they had anything sitting in there that they were keeping in check, it's going to come to the surface. Parasites are going to start to get stronger, right? Bacteria, whatever's going on, is going to get stronger. So you quarantine them, in my case for a month, and watch them closely before you add them to a main tank. Let's see here. So Greg McPherson flooded the room. Sorry to hear that. I hope you don't have wood or carpet. Aldo, I'm not familiar with Equilibrium. Not familiar with that product. I'm sorry. Let's see here. It looks like Bottom Dweller, you were having some problems with the freezing stream. It says on my end that I have an excellent connection. Candy, were you having any problems with screen freezing or sound? Any problems with video or sound, please let me know. Joey Stevens, heavily stocked and achieved zero nitrate, zero and nitrites and ammonia. I would love to hear how you did that, Joey. If you'd like to share in the chat or after this video posts, Joey, share how you were able to achieve that with a heavily stocked tank, zero nitrates, and that's like the holy grail for fish keepers, right? M&C Aquatics, Father Fish has talked about gas in deep substrate. That's exactly what I heard. It will create a bubble. The bubble will break at the surface and will gas off, and you're not going to have a problem. It shouldn't actually impact the fish. It's one of those urban legends that has circulated in the fish keeping world for quite some time, but apparently there's no merit to it. Let's see here. One of you said you'd rather see the tanks than the chat. When I'm going through the chat, I show the chat. But if you'd rather see the tanks, I'd rather see the tanks too. So thank you so much to my moderators for keeping peace and order. Thank you, Candy and Denny and GP. Thank you to my super chatters, and a shout out to my friends at Elite Cichlids. I got a box right before I started today's stream. I got this box, and I haven't opened it, or I've opened it, but I haven't looked at what's inside. And you are going to be the first, along with me, to see what's in here. I was expecting it on Tuesday, but it came early. I'm going to use all this in my fireplace. All right. So what I have here is a piece of real driftwood that has been attached. I thought he was going to use live plants, but I think he went with the Elite Cichlid tanks, the Elite plants. I have a piece of driftwood that's been attached to some of the Elite Cichlid plants. Now, a lot of you, this is real wood, so it doesn't matter if I get some tannins or a little bit of an impact on pH. I've heard wood can affect pH, can lower pH. It's going to go into the South American tank here, behind me, right here. And I have live plants in there right now. Wow, look at this guy. That's beautiful. Mike and Jack over at Elite Cichlids, thank you so much for this. This is beautiful. And they attach their arrangements to these pieces of slate. You can see that. And they use sand mixed in with the glue. Beautiful piece from Elite Cichlids. And some of you informed me that my South American cichlids are going to be eating the plants. So having some artificial plants in that South American cichlid, or the South American, Central American tank is the direction that I would eventually have to go in. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mike, Jack, the family over at Elite Cichlids. Check out Elite Cichlids. Tell them you want the Ben Ochart discount if you pick up anything from them. And on that bit of good news, I think we're going to go ahead and sign off. Be sure to hit that bell and that like if you haven't already. Visit me on Facebook at Ben O apostrophe Cichlid. Please be sure to answer all the questions if you go to join that group, because if you don't, the moderators they don't let you in. It's how they control the trolls. Follow me on Instagram, ben.o.cichlid. And that's it. I think we're done. Thank you, everybody. I hope to see you next week. And look for a video tomorrow. Weather permitting, if I can get out and pick up some fish, look for that video tomorrow. All right? Thank you so much, folks. You're still here? Now, come on. It's the weekend. Get out there and have some fun.